Well, good morning. Welcome back to the Shasta Valley Christian Fellowship. We are in Luke 15 this morning. And to give a little prelude to this, so when we finished up with Luke 14, Jesus was just kind of going through the fact that it costs to be a disciple. Salvation is free, but to actually follow Jesus, you're going to probably have to give up some things that you shouldn't be doing anyway. What's interesting, though, is when we start Luke 15, this message is drawing the tax collectors, the prostitutes, the sinners, people you wouldn't expect to. See, nowadays, we think we got to kind of sugarcoat the gospel to make it more appealing to people. You just keep living your life, just trust Jesus, you'll be fine. But that's not what Jesus did. And his message was really resonating amongst these people that society was looking down on, especially their society at the time. I'm going to break it up into 3 sections. We'll talk about each of the parables. And what's going on here is the Pharisees are upset with the fact that Jesus is showing attention to these people the Pharisees are thinking are like lowlifes. And so that's where these parables come from. And they're each good. They got a great story, each of themselves. But keep in mind that this is directed to the Pharisees as we read these. He's trying to tell them a message. And the reason we want to keep thinking about that is in our modern Christian church, we can tend to think like they did. We can tend to think that maybe, God can't work over here because it's not part of our denomination or what have you. Maybe God's working in another denomination and we feel jealous or whatever because, we got the right denomination. Why doesn't he do his work here? When it's God, he can do his work wherever he wants to. He could start a revival in a bar if he wanted to. We should be happy that people are following God and not condemning the fact that it came from somewhere else. So with that, let's jump into Luke 15. We'll read the first 7 verses. So the first one is the parable of the lost sheep. Verse 1, chapter 15. Now the tax collectors and sinners were all gathering around to hear Jesus. But the Pharisees and the teachers of the law muttered, "This man welcomes sinners and eats with them." And Jesus told them this parable. Suppose one of you has 100 sheep and loses one of them. Doesn't he leave the 99 in the open country and go after the lost sheep until he finds it? And when he finds it, he joyfully puts it on his shoulders and carries it and goes home. Then he calls his friends and neighbors together and says, "Rejoice with me, I have found my lost sheep." I tell you that in the same way there will be more rejoicing in heaven over one sinner who repents than over 99 righteous persons who do not need to repent. To us, it sounds kind of like a cute story, but to them, this was kind of like a shocking thing that Jesus was talking about, specifically when the people rejoicing over the sinner repenting. The Pharisees had a saying that there's rejoicing in heaven when a sinner goes to hell. And Jesus tells them, no, that's wrong. There's actually rejoicing in heaven when the sinner repents. But he has a point. So suppose you got your flock of 99 sheep, or your 100 sheep, one of them wanders off. Are you going to go, I still got 99, I'm good? Or are you going to go after the sheep that went away, right? Of course you are. I think it was C.S. Lewis, one of the authors. He was in Scotland. He visited a shepherd up there. And he was talking about sheep and their propensity to just wander off from the herd. And the shepherd goes, yeah, there's a specific grass that they like around here. And if they don't have it right there, they will actually wander off trying to find it. And sometimes it's down on a bluff, and they'll drop down to a ledge to eat the grass. And you have to go get him. He goes, but when they do that, I leave them there. I let them finish eating all the grass that's on that ledge. And then I leave them there for a long time after that, and till they get basically weak. And then I jump down and grab them. The guy goes, well, why is that? He says, well, when they first jump off the ledge, if I were to jump down with them, I might startle them and they'd jump off the ledge and end up dying. So I let them sit there bleeding, asking for help, basically, until they're too weak to move. Then I can bring them back up to safety and bring them back with the flock. The reason I'm bringing that up is there's sometimes when people will get into something, wander off like they say, and God will leave them there for a while until they get really desperate. They might be calling out in the meantime, but he's going to leave them there until they're ready to actually be saved.
Right. They might have wandered into sin and think they're having fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we kind of get this stuff, make it practical when we're helping maybe a family member who keeps getting into trouble. There's a point where that helping becomes enabling because they know they can just fall back on you. Mm-hmm. So maybe they need to actually go through the trouble for a while before they get brought out of it. I know somebody who went to jail kind of frequently and always got bailed out until his mom finally said, I'm not doing it anymore. He spent a long time in jail. When he came out of there, he actually found Jesus in jail, and he came out of there a believer, and he didn't go back to jail after that. So sometimes it takes that tough love.
Yeah, I kept bailing my son out. Every time he went around, he got in trouble, and I got him out of jail a couple of times. I paid his bills for him, everything, and he knew I'd do it. And I finally had to do that. I finally had just let go. And that's hard.
Yeah, my sister-in-law had to call me one time because my niece was in jail, but she had been in trouble frequently. And I said, well, when is she going to get out? If she doesn't get bailed out, when is she going to get out? Oh, tomorrow. I said, they were in jail overnight.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Let her stay there overnight. Maybe she'll learn something.
Yeah.
I felt bad for her, but still.
Sometimes that's what it takes.
Yeah.
Now notice as we're going through these three different parables, there's three different people, or groups of people, if you will, that we're talking about. The lost sheep is someone who knows that they're lost. They're ready to come back. The shepherd just got to go get them, basically. Let's move on to the lost coin, verses 8 through 10. It's a quick little 3 verses. Verse 8. Or suppose a woman has 10 silver coins and loses one. Doesn't she light a lamp, sweep the house, and search carefully until she finds it? And when she finds it, she calls her friends and neighbors together and says, rejoice with me. I have found my lost coin. In the same way, I tell you, there's rejoicing in the presence of the angels of God over one sinner who repents. Again, this is just really rubbing the Pharisees raw, probably. But this coin, don't think of like our pocket change. They didn't have cash money. All their money was in coins. And this particular coin was probably worth about a day's wages. So you think of that today, if you had lost, I don't want to alienate anybody here, let's say $200, I think is an average pay. So if you lost $200, you'd be looking all over for that $200. And when you found it, you like breathe a sigh of relief, and you feel really happy about it. On the same way, heaven rejoices whenever a sinner comes back. So these people here that this is representing don't know that they're lost. But God is still out there, quote unquote, looking for them. He knows where they're at. But he's waiting for the right time to pluck them back up. Any questions on this? I'm kind of rolling through it and not asking you guys.
No, that's just very, very beautiful.
Yeah.
I remember when my sister wasn't going to church, and it really, really was very hard for me to just see her lost. And now she's in it more than I am. I love it.
That's good. So we're going to come to the longest of the parables here. And you're going to see this is really directed towards the Pharisees. But it's talking about another type of lost person. This person does not want to be found. This person says, I am out of here. I don't want no more part of this. Let's go ahead and start that one. It's the parable of the lost son or the prodigal son. It starts in verse 11. Jesus continued, there was a man who had 2 sons. The younger one said to his father, Father, give me my share of the estate. So he divided his property between them. Not long after that, the younger son got together all he had, set off for a distant country, there squandered his wealth in wild living. After he had spent everything, there was a severe famine in the whole country, and he began to be in need. So he went and hired himself out to a citizen of that country who sent him to his fields to feed the pigs. He longed to fill his stomach with the pods that the pigs were eating, but no one gave him anything. When he came to his senses, he said, how many of my father's hired servants have food to spare? And here I am starving to death. I will set out and go back to my father and say to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and against you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. Make me like one of your hired servants. So he got up and went to his father. But while he was still a long way off, his father saw him and was filled with compassion for him. He ran to his son and threw his arms around him and kissed him. The son said to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and against you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. But the father said to his servants, Quick, bring the best robe and put it on him. Put a ring on his finger and sandals on his feet. Bring the fattened calf and kill it. Let's have a feast and celebrate. For the son of mine was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found. So they began to celebrate. Meanwhile, the older son was in the field. When he came near the house, he heard music and dancing. So he called one of the servants and asked him what was going on. Your brother has come, he replied, and your father has killed the fattened calf because he has come back safe and sound. The older brother became angry and refused to go in. So his father went out and pleaded with him. But he answered his father, Look, all these years I have been slaving for you and never disobeyed your orders. Yet you never gave me even a young goat so I could celebrate with my friends. But when this son of yours, who has squandered your property with prostitutes, comes home, you kill a fattened calf for him. My son, the father said, you are always with me, and in everything I have is yours. But we had to celebrate and be glad, because this brother of yours was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found. So the older brother in here represents the Pharisees. And the Pharisees, I'm pretty sure, understood that completely. Maybe we should just go by this verse by verse. So there's a man, he has 2 sons. The younger one says to his father, Father, give me my share of the estate, basically give me my inheritance. This was incredibly disrespectful in that culture. This is basically telling him, Dad, I wish you were dead. So everybody that's hearing this would probably think, wow, he's going to get reprimanded, he's going to get disciplined. You know, the father's not going to let him get away with that. But the father goes ahead and divides up the estate and gives the younger son his portion. Verse 13, not long after that, the younger son got together all he had and set off for a distant country, and there squandered his wealth in wild living. We don't think too much of that, but keep in mind, Israel was the Holy Land. So when him to go to a distant country meant he was going out to live amongst people who were not Jewish. He was basically going out and just leaving the land would defile him, make him less human or what have you. And not only that, but he goes and squanders everything he has. He doesn't make good use of this money that he was given. He throws it all away. And so these people are probably thinking, wow, you know, what a worthless piece of garbage this guy is. He finds himself in need. So all this money that he had blown, he probably had a bunch of friends while he was blowing money and throwing the money around. But as soon as it was gone, his friends are gone. He's left with nothing, and they didn't really have welfare back then. So he hires himself out. Basically, he's enslaved himself to this person to go take care of his pigs. And it's so bad that he wants to eat these pods that they're feeding the pigs. These pods were actually not meant for human consumption. There's some chemical in there that humans can't digest. And so he couldn't even eat the slop that he's feeding the pigs, but he wants to. But he finally comes to his senses. It's like, why am I here? Even the servants in my father's house have more than this. I'll just go back and at least get hired on as a servant. That was verse 17. So he gets everything rehearsed. I'm sure we probably all did this as kids. When you got into trouble or something, you had some really good story made up to tell your parents when they got home.
We thought it was a good one. We didn't think they could see right through it.
Yeah. I have a neighbor. One of the rooms got tore up really bad. And the youngest kid goes, I saw monkeys go in there and just started throwing stuff around. Like, well, we know what happened now.
Jumping on the bed.
Yeah. Yeah. They give him an A for creativity, but he might need to check his sources. So anyway, he gets this long, speech basically played out of how he's going to talk to his father. And he sets out, keep in mind, he's probably stinking. He's probably tattered clothes. He's
Smells like the pigs.
Yeah, this is the opposite of what a Pharisee would be. They're very clean, well dressed, and all that. In the middle of verse 20, so he got up and went to his father, but while he was still a long way off, his father saw him and was filled with compassion for him. How's the father going to see him when he's a long ways off?
Two people telling him, hey, your son's on his way home.
The father was probably looking for him. This area that they were in a little town. So, especially in that circumstance, the father would have been like on the edge of the town looking out for his son to come back, waiting for him to come home. Same thing, we have these people that wander off. God's just waiting for them to come back. But they got to hit that low point. Kind of like that sheep on the mountain. They got to get to a point to where they realize they're in a bad place. Otherwise, it's not going to do any good to help them out. Some people will get to that point, and you got to let them do it. Let them go off and have their fun until they realize what kind of a problem it is, and they bring it back. They come back. I kind of reached that point myself when it became very apparent to me if I kept living the way I was living, I was going to get myself or someone else killed because I was basically not sleeping. I was working a night shift and partying during the day, which made me run into somebody else at night or during the day because I fell asleep at the wheel. But I realized very quickly, like I said, that if I don't change my ways, either I myself or someone else is going to get killed. And that's when I said, Lord, I'm turning my life over to you because there's got to be something better. I didn't know what it was. I was raised in a church, but I had no idea what it meant to live as a Christian. Sorry to say, because the church only taught salvation, and once you're saved, everything was fine. So, but there is a better way to live. So son starts letting out the spiel, verse 21. Son said to him, Father, I've sinned against heaven and against you. I'm no longer worthy to be called your son. This is basically a confession. We talk about people coming to Christ. We tell them, just confess to God that you're a sinner and you need him to save you. That's all he's doing. He's doing the same thing to his father. Jesus is laying this out in this parable.
You think most of the people hearing this are rejecting the story?
Well, I'm sure that a lot of them are really not liking the way this is playing out because they're going, if he was a good Jewish man, he would have just whipped his boy.
Right.
I agree.
But the father doesn't let him get to the point of saying, let me be your servant. He just stops right there. He says, no, go get the nicest robe we got, which was probably the father's robe, to put on him. Put a ring on his finger. This ring would have been a symbol of authority. So the kid's going in there expecting just to be, begging to be taken in as a servant, and the father in the story represents God. But
This is how it is for us too. Every time we backslide and we come back to God,
Right.
we feel bad, and God will bless us. While we're, still
Yeah.
not close to Him, He'll bless us. And we'll say, "Oh God, you're still being good to me."
And then we might be like the older brother and see someone else going through that and get kind of upset because God's blessing them. It's like, I've been here the whole time doing everything I'm supposed to.
Yeah, that's how I feel.
And that's where he's getting to with the older brother. We'll get to that here in a second. So the father gives his reasoning. He goes, because the son of mine was dead. And the Bible tells us that people that are living in sin are basically dead. They're spiritually dead. God brings them out of the sin. He brings them back to living, to life. 25. Meanwhile, the older son was in the field. So he's doing what he's supposed to be doing. He's taking care of the field like he was supposed to. When he comes home, he hears the music and dancing. So he calls out one of the servants and asks them, what is going on? I didn't hear anything about how it's having a party today or anything. And he tells him, your brother's come home, and your father has killed the fattened calf because he came back safe and sound. This fattened calf, this was something that was reserved for very special occasions or sacrifices. They wouldn't just take the best animal and have it for a normal meal or something like that. They're going all out for this celebration, in other words. So the older brother becomes angry and refuses to go in. And I kind of get where the brother's coming from. I see some jealousy going on here, but like we were just talking about, we spend our whole lives doing what we're supposed to be doing. And then we see someone else who's running amok, and they come back and God blesses them. It's like, what do I mean? Well, we should be happy that we're already in God's house and we're not going through that stuff.
I think that's just our human nature coming out, our fallen.
Yeah.
Coming out when
it's that enviousness, that covetousness that we're not supposed to be having. We want what somebody else has.
Well, like when you're buying hamburger helper and the people behind you or in front of you are buying steak with food stamps.
Yeah.
Burns me up.
You gotta get on food.
Yeah.
I don't know if I was on food stamps for a while. I don't think I could afford steak on food stamps. I can see it happening though. So the older brother's angry. Notice he doesn't go inside. He makes his father come out to him. This is another very disrespectful thing in their culture. Just all this stuff that he's talking about, the Jewish people are going, what? But I think part of this too is to keep them involved. If I just were to get up and just rattle off a bunch of stuff from a sermon, people's eyes would glaze over. But when we tell it in parables, we call them word pictures. We tell stories. People get involved in the stories, and it kind of sinks in more.
This is why I like hearing you talk.
Thank you. Yeah, I try to incorporate stories so it speaks to you, make it relevant
That's
for
how
the
my
day.
dad always talks with the stories, but there was never any importance in it.
Really
Random
good.
stories.
It was really a good story. You can make it laugh, though.
There are some of those where I had a point and then I was just editing the video and I got like halfway through what I was talking about. I forgot what the point was. It's like, I don't know where to end this.
That's where he was going.
Yeah. So he's being very disrespectful. And the father's pleading with him. The son answers his father, look, all these years I have been slaving for you and never disobeyed your orders. What does that say about the relationship? He is comparing his father to a slave driver, a taskmaster, basically. There's something wrong with this relationship.
Oh, he's just angry.
He is. He's lashing out in anger.
Yeah. You say things in anger.
But I'm pretty sure this is hurting the father at the same time. And if we look at this older brother as the Pharisees, they're getting kind of jealous of this attention that God is placing on these people that they think are not worthwhile, that should be thrown into hell. Because they've been doing everything they're supposed to all their lives that they think they have. They've basically become slaves to their religion. They did everything like they were supposed to. They observed all their things they're supposed to observe, all their laws. Let's keep on going. So I've done all this, and you never even gave me a young goat. When I say kid, don't think he's talking about, child abduction or something. It's a kid goat. So he could celebrate with his friends. But when this son of yours who has squandered your property, so keep in mind, this kid already offended pretty much everybody there by asking for his inheritance early. Then when he gets it, he goes off to this defiled land, does everything he's not supposed to. Now he's come back, and you're throwing a party for him? Yeah, I kind of get where the brother's at there. We're talking about the sheep. There's one thing I forgot to point out. When the shepherd went to get the sheep, he put it on his shoulders and carried him back. I probably would have been like, no, you got yourself, you walking back. Cool. But God's not that way. He carries us back to where we need to be. And we should have a lot of patience for people who are coming out of something that have been lost. But back to the brother. Yeah, he's really seeing this as being unjust. He's thinking as this like slave-master relationship, and that's not how the family relationship should be. The father's a loving father caring for his children. So verse 31, my son, the father said, you are always with me, and everything I have is yours. But we had to celebrate and be glad, because this brother of yours was dead and is alive again, who is lost and is found. So instead of being jealous or upset about them throwing the party, the brother should have just been happy that his brother was back. Basically, if you got in the word that your family member was dead, but then you find out it was, a lie or something, you found they're actually alive, you're going to feel really happy. You'd be celebrating. Or maybe they just barely pulled through something. You probably would go out and have a celebration. We're alive. So the first, just to recap, the lost sheep is representing people who you say are believers, but they've gone off the path. God's going to be patient with them, but he's going to go bring them back. Pair of lost coin, people that don't know they're lost. They're just out there living life, have no clue that God exists or don't want to admit it or whatever. God is going to go find them. The parable of the prodigal son is someone who is basically, they've just walked away from it all. Each one, God is sitting there watching them, waiting for the right time to bring them back. Any questions?
Well, I think for me, I just have to pray that I, wouldn't be like the the jealous brother. When I see people come back, because I have a brother and a sister that have kind of turned their back on the whole family and on God. And if they came back, I don't know if I would be super happy that they were back.
Well, especially if they burnt some bridges on the way out too.
Yeah.
That could be hard.
I think I have to work on that. Definitely have to pray about that for myself.
Yeah. All right. There's nothing else. Bye, you two.